Hanna-Barbera defined childhood for generations, but not every cartoon they made became a classic. Between the icons, they quietly dropped some of the weirdest, wildest, and worst flops in animation history. Forgotten bears, ghostly detectives, robotic stooges, and blob-shaped sidekicks. These are the cartoons that missed the mark. Let's count down 20 Hanna-Barbera shows that flopped so hard you forgot they existed. Number 20, The Super Globetrotters, 1979. It was basketball meets superheroes, in a fusion only late Hanna-Barbera could dream up. The Super Globetrotters was a surreal spin-off, where America's favorite exhibition team swapped their shorts for spandex and fought crime with powers like lightning speed, stretching limbs, and yes, tornado hair. But the court was empty. No one showed up. The show featured characters like Liquid Man, who could melt through keyholes, and Spaghetti Man, who twisted himself into ropes and lassos. It played like a fever dream, with animation recycled straight from earlier Hanna-Barbera action shows. The plots were rushed, the jokes were flat, and despite the Globetrotters' real-life fame, the series dunked itself into obscurity after just one season. Worse yet, fans of the original Harlem Globetrotters cartoon from earlier in the decade were left confused. This version had zero continuity and leaned so hard into superhero absurdity that even young viewers lost interest. Today, it stands as one of the strangest brand extensions in cartoon history, forgotten by sports fans and animation lovers alike. Number 19, CB Bears, 1977. CB Bears was Hanna-Barbera's desperate attempt to cash in on two things that were briefly hot in the late 70s, CB radio culture and mystery-solving animals. This short-lived mess gave us three talking bears in a garbage truck using Citizens Band radios to crack cases. It was a formula built entirely out of trend-chasing and commercial desperation. The bear trio, Hustle, Buggy, and Bump, took orders from a radio dispatcher named Charlie and somehow managed to solve crimes while hauling trash. Each episode tried to blend Scooby-Doo antics with trucker lingo and slapstick comedy, but it never clicked. The animation was cheap, even by Saturday morning standards, and none of the bears were distinct or memorable. Even more confusing, the show aired as part of a package with unrelated mini-cartoons like Blast Off Buzzard and Shake, Rattle, and Roll, making it feel disjointed and scatterbrained. CB Bears wasn't just forgettable, it was the kind of show that vanished mid-broadcast in some markets, buried in the landfill of animation history. Number 18, Yogi's Gang, 1973. What happens when you cram every Hanna-Barbera mascot into one moralizing boat ride? You get Yogi's Gang. On paper, it sounds like a crossover dream. Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Snagglepuss, and others cruising around the world on a flying ark, solving environmental and social issues. But in practice, it was a preachy mess that even kids rejected. Originally introduced as a primetime TV special called Yogi's Ark Lark, the series quickly spun off into a full show. Each episode featured the gang facing off against pun-heavy villains like Mr. Smog or Lotta Litter in half-baked parables about pollution, racism, and greed. Good intentions, yes. Good storytelling, no. The recycled animation and constant lectures left children tuning out. Even longtime fans of Yogi Bear found the format tiring. The tone wavered between silly and self-important, and the writing felt more like a sermon than a cartoon. Yogi's Gang tried to teach morality to a generation of kids raised on slapstick, and it flopped hard. Number 17, The Roman Holidays, 1972. Imagine the Flintstones, but in ancient Rome. That was the pitch behind The Roman Holidays, a short-lived Hanna-Barbera experiment that flipped prehistoric gags into togas, temples, and chariots. But lightning didn't strike twice. While Fred and Barney became icons, Augustus Holiday and his Roman suburbia were forgotten within months. Set in the year 100 BC, the series followed Augustus, his wife Lori, their kids, and a snarky talking lion as they navigated a world of aqueducts and colosseums with a suburban sitcom lens. The humor leaned on anachronisms, just like the Flintstones, but where Fred's world felt fresh, the Roman twist felt oddly stiff and hollow. There were puns about Caesar traffic jams and gladiator TV shows, but the charm was missing. Despite high production hopes, the series failed to connect. The characters were bland, the setting lacked comedic punch, and viewers tuned out fast. Even reruns failed to build nostalgia. The Roman Holidays now stands as a bizarre fossil in the Hanna-Barbera archive, an ambitious flop that nobody asked for and fewer remembered. Number 16. Galaxy Goofups, 1978. Yogi Bear in Space? That was the premise of Galaxy Goofups, a baffling spin-off of Yogi's Space Race, where classic cartoon mascots became bumbling space cops. Yogi, Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, and Scare Bear were now futuristic law enforcers, somehow trusted with intergalactic justice. The show aimed for laughs, but landed face-first into chaos. Each episode followed the Goofups accidentally thwarting evil through dumb luck, usually after ignoring direct orders from their boss, Captain Snurdly. The plots were paper-thin, and the humor relied on recycled slapstick. Adding disco dance numbers and a space nightclub subplot only made things weirder. Kids were confused, parents were baffled. The series tried to give old mascots new life in the sci-fi boom of the late 70s, but it never clicked. Critics called it tone-deaf, and fans saw it as character assassination. After a single season, the show vanished into obscurity. Galaxy Goofups proved that not even Yogi Bear could survive deep space irrelevance. Number 15. Rickety Rocket, 1979. Long before diversity in animation became a cause, Rickety Rocket tried to blaze that trail, but stumbled hard. This short-lived Hanna-Barbera show starred 4 black teenagers who formed the far-out detective agency and built a sentient rocket ship from junkyard parts. It was part Scooby-Doo, part blaxploitation, and all awkward. The Rocket, Rickety, talked in broken English and coughed smoke while the teens solved mysteries across space. On paper, the representation was groundbreaking, but the execution leaned into stereotypes. The animation was low-budget, the humor cringeworthy, and the cultural tone unsteady. The voices felt forced, and the writing often undercut the potential of its own cast. Despite its progressive veneer, the show lasted only 1 season. It was quietly buried and rarely rerun. Today, Rickety Rocket is remembered more for what it tried to be than what it actually was. A bold idea that deserved better but crashed from the weight of its own execution. Number 14. The Funky Phantom, 1971. Imagine Scooby-Doo, but replace the dog with a Revolutionary War ghost and his invisible cat. That was the Funky Phantom, Hanna-Barbera's attempt to double down on the teen mystery formula with supernatural flair. But instead of catching on, it vanished like its title character from Saturday Morning Memory. The story followed 3 teens who stumbled upon a grandfather clock housing a ghost named Jonathan Wellington Muddlemore. He spoke like a knockoff of Snagglepuss and appeared with his ghostly feline companion Boo. Together, they helped the kids solve mysteries mostly through accidental hauntings and bumbling antics. The formula was recycled from Scooby-Doo Where Are You, but lacked the suspense and charm. The animation was cheap, even by 70s standards, and the ghost gimmick wore thin quickly. The characters were one-dimensional, and the mysteries were laughably predictable. Ratings dropped, and the series only lasted 1 season. Even nostalgia-based retrospectives rarely mention it. The Funky Phantom remains a forgotten spirit in the vast Hanna-Barbera graveyard. Number 13. Goober and the Ghost Chasers, 1973. Just when you thought one Scooby-Doo clone was enough, Hanna-Barbera delivered another. Goober and the Ghost Chasers introduced a van full of teens and a talking dog again. But this time the dog could turn invisible. The twist should have been enough to stand out. Instead, it sank. The characters were forgettable, including the dog Goober, whose disappearing act quickly became a repetitive gimmick. The Ghost Chasers traveled from town to town, solving hauntings that were usually not supernatural at all. Adding to the weirdness, the first few episodes featured the Partridge Kids from the Partridge Family cartoon crossover, but not even pop star cameos could save it. The formula felt tired even in the early 70s, and the show failed to gain any real following. Episodes were rerun briefly, then shelved. It became another case of animated déjà vu, too familiar, too unfunny, and too late. Goober and the Ghost Chasers disappeared just like its star character. Number 12. Clue Club, 1976. Clue Club was Hanna-Barbera's 4th or 5th attempt to copy their own mystery-solving formula, and this one was the most forgettable. A group of teen detectives, 2 talking dogs, and a typewriter named Dot formed the crew. The hook? There wasn't one. It was Scooby-Doo all over again, but with less charm. The kids included Larry D.D. Pepper and Dottie, with the youngest doing all the tech analysis from home. But the stars were the dogs Woofer and Whimper, who narrated each episode in pointless banter that rarely matched the on-screen action. The mysteries were shallow, and the animation often looped with minimal change. Even for die-hard Hanna-Barbera fans, Clue Club barely registers. It ran briefly, then became filler material on Saturday morning rotations. No toys, no reruns, no nostalgia. It was created at a time when the studio was pushing quantity over quality, and the result was cardboard animation and hollow stories, a flop forgotten for good reason. Number 11. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids, 1973. Take the names of two infamous outlaws, strip away their grit, and turn them into a groovy teenage rock band who moonlight as secret agents. That was the pitch behind Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids, one of the most puzzling misfires in Hanna-Barbera's catalog. It sounded edgy, but it landed soft. The series followed Butch and his band, including a computer expert, a bongo-playing dog, and a talking wristwatch, as they toured the globe and fought crime for an unseen boss named Mr. Socrates. The villains were generic, the mysteries weak, and the animation even lazier than the premise. Despite a few catchy songs and a slick opening theme, it lacked personality and momentum. Its attempt to mix music, mystery, and espionage felt like a hodgepodge of cooler shows. It was part Scooby-Doo, part Josie and the Pussycats, and all confusion. It aired quietly for a single season and was quickly forgotten. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids proved you could have a bold title and still end up completely irrelevant. Number 10. Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels, 1977. With a battle cry that could wake the dead, Captain Caveman arrived on Saturday mornings in a gust of prehistoric nonsense. This shaggy, club-wielding Neanderthal teamed up with three teen detectives to solve mysteries in a blatant mashup of Scooby-Doo and Charlie's Angels. It had energy and chaos, but little staying power. Captain Caveman could fly by, spinning his club, yell his name to unleash powers, and pull anything out of his beard, including furniture. The Teen Angels were barely distinguishable and served mostly as setup for Caveman's gags. The slapstick was wild but repetitive, and the plots were forgettable even for kids. Though the character became a minor cult icon, the show itself faded quickly. It relied so heavily on shouting and randomness that it wore out its welcome within a season. It became background noise in later rerun packages. Today people remember the voice, but few remember the show. It flopped hard despite the volume. Number 9. The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan, 1972. Hanna-Barbera took a swing at cultural representation with The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan, but what emerged was an uncomfortable blend of stereotypes and forgettable storytelling. Based loosely on the Charlie Chan detective novels, the series starred Mr. Chan and his 10 children solving mysteries while riding around in a transforming van. The result was tone-deaf and instantly dated. The show tried to modernize the classic detective by making his kids part of the action, but the children were indistinct and the plots formulaic. Even more controversial was the fact that most of the characters were voiced by white actors using exaggerated Asian accents. After protests, Hanna-Barbera recast the roles with Asian American actors, but by then the damage was done. It only lasted a handful of episodes. Critics panned it for poor taste and flat writing. Even animation fans have a hard time tracking it down. The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan tried to be inclusive but became one of Hanna-Barbera's most awkward and least remembered efforts. Number 8. Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch, 1974. It was wacky races without the charm. Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch featured a world of talking cars and motorcycles, but no humans. That meant every joke, every chase, and every emotion had to come from horn honks, tire squeals, and cartoon grunts. Even kids found that exhausting. Wheelie was a red dune buggy with a high-pitched voice and a love interest named Rota-Ree. His enemies were the Chopper Bunch, 4 motorcycles who spent each episode trying to sabotage him with slapstick gags that made the Roadrunner look deep. But instead of clever traps or racing drama, the show offered recycled animations and flat punchlines. Dialogue was minimal, with most of the humor coming from gibberish and sound effects. The novelty wore off fast. Without a human cast or engaging storyline, Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch felt like a noisy void. It ran for one season, then sputtered out. Today, even gearhead cartoon fans barely remember it ever existed. Number 7. Speed Buggy, 1973. Just when Hanna-Barbera thought they could merge cars and crime-solving Speed Buggy hit the air. The result was another Scooby-Doo clone, only this time with a sputtering talking dune buggy named Speedy, and 3 human teens who raced from mystery to mystery. It was fast-paced but forgettable. Speed Buggy communicated in engine backfire gibberish while his pals, Tinker Debbie and Mark, acted as the meddling teens. They traveled to racetracks, science labs, haunted castles, and even foreign countries, where they uncovered silly plots and goofy villains. The animation was bright, but the storytelling was on autopilot. Worse, the Speed Buggy character was a second-rate clone of Scooby-Doo's vocal gimmick. It aired for a single season, but was rerun enough to stay faintly in the cultural background. Still, it never built a real following or inspired merchandise. For every kid who remembers it, there are 10 who confused it with Wheelie or Josie and the Pussycats, a colorful but completely disposable cartoon relic. Number 6. Inch-High Private Eye, 1973. The title said it all. Inch-High Private Eye followed a detective who was literally 1 inch tall. That was the whole joke. Each episode had the miniature gumshoe solving crimes while riding around on his niece's dachshund and dealing with threats that were 3 times his size. But the premise wore thin fast. The show leaned hard on slapstick, dodging shoes, crawling through vents, getting sucked into vacuum cleaners. It featured the voice of Lenny Weinrib giving Inch-High a snappy nasal delivery, but the character lacked depth. His supporting cast, including his niece Lori and strongman pal Gator, felt like cardboard cutouts. The writing repeated the same gag each week. Small guy gets ignored, then saves the day. Despite the catchy opening theme and a clever title, the show bombed. It was too absurd for older kids and too repetitive for younger ones. Inch-High Private Eye shrunk from the Saturday morning lineup after just 1 season and left no legacy behind except its catchy but ironic name. Number 5. The Buford Files, 1979. The Buford Files was another cog in Hanna-Barbera's crime-solving animal machine. Only this time the dog was a bloodhound with a lazy southern drawl and a howling problem. The series starred Buford, a sleepy yet surprisingly competent dog helping 2 teen detectives solve mysteries in the American South, but not even his exaggerated ears could pick up audience interest. Buford's signature gag was his howl setting off random events and giving him clues. It was funny the first time, less so the 10th. The animation was flat, the music generic, and the mysteries even more recycled than usual. The show tried to blend Scooby-Doo logic with Bayou flavor but came off as half-baked. Aired as part of Buford and the Galloping Ghost, the cartoon was given little room to breathe. It lacked an identity of its own and was buried under stronger competition. Buford never got his own merch and never stuck in kids' memories. Today he's a footnote in the studio's decline into formula fatigue. Number 4. Help! It's the Hair Bear Bunch, 1971. Hanna-Barbera's answer to anti-establishment cartoons came in the form of 3 hipster bears living in a zoo trying to outwit their clueless zookeepers. The Hair Bear Bunch wanted to capture the counterculture vibe of the late 60s, but ended up as a confusing mishmash of catchphrases and recycled antics. Hair Bear, Square Bear, and Booby Bear used invisible motorcycles and trick cages to break out of the Wonderland Zoo each episode, only to return by the end. Their dialogue was loaded with hip slang and groovy lingo, but it felt awkward and dated even at the time. The gags were routine, the characters derivative, and the humor too forced to resonate. It tried to blend Top Cat with Yogi Bear and a touch of laugh-in, but ended up a disjointed echo of better shows. It lasted just 1 season before vanishing from the Hanna-Barbera rotation. Few kids ever bonded with the Hair Bear Bunch, and fewer adults even remember they existed. Number 3. Develin, 1974. In a rare and serious departure for Hanna-Barbera, Develin told the story of a motorcycle stuntman and his siblings as they traveled with a circus and faced life's challenges. No jokes, no talking animals, just family drama and emotional lessons. It was bold but baffling, and it flopped hard. Ernie Develin was the daredevil star trying to balance thrill-seeking with responsibility while caring for his younger brother and sister. The show tackled topics like peer pressure and sibling tension, but viewers who came expecting laughter got moral lectures instead. The animation was somber, the pacing slow, and the stories surprisingly mature for Saturday morning. Despite good intentions, Develin clashed with Hanna-Barbera's brand image. Kids were bored, and networks had no idea how to market it. After a single season, it was pulled and mostly forgotten. Today it remains one of the studio's most unusual efforts, not because it was bad, but because it was just too real. Number 2. The New Schmoo, 1979. If you thought the Schmoo belonged in the past, you were right. But that didn't stop Hanna-Barbera from resurrecting the doughy blob from Lil Abner and turning him into a mystery-solving cartoon character. The New Schmoo was equal parts bizarre and bland, and it flopped with thunderous silence. In this reimagining, the Schmoo was a cheerful, shape-shifting sidekick, helping 3 teens solve crimes. He could become anything: a ladder, a parachute, even a bowling ball. But those gags grew stale quickly. The teens were cardboard copies of earlier Hanna-Barbera characters, and the plots followed the same tired formula. Even the novelty of a morphing blob wasn't enough to save it. The Schmoo had once been a cultural phenomenon in the late 40s. Reviving him 3 decades later for a Scooby-style clone confused more than it excited. The show aired briefly as part of Fred and Barney Meet the Schmoo before disappearing entirely. Today, the New Schmoo survives only in forgotten syndication reels and obscure trivia books, a rubbery footnote in Hanna-Barbera's long decline. Number 1. The 3 Robotic Stooges, 1977. Take the 3 Stooges, make them cybernetic superheroes, and strip away every ounce of their original charm. That was the doomed experiment known as the Robotic Stooges. It had slapstick, it had lasers, it had robotic limbs. But what it didn't have was a reason to exist. Moe, Larry, and Curly were reimagined as crime-fighting androids built by a scientist named Professor Thaddeus Tuttle. They took orders, battled villains, and bumbled through every mission with catchphrases and pratfalls. But without the real voices or classic physicality, the humor felt flat. The animation was stiff, and the writing never captured the chaotic energy of the original live-action trio. Kids didn't connect, adults were confused, and Stooge purists were horrified. The show ran briefly as a segment on the Skatebirds before fading into oblivion. It is now remembered, if at all, as a cautionary tale about bad branding decisions. The Robotic Stooges flopped so hard even Moe would have slapped it out of existence. Hanna-Barbera created legends, but these cartoons prove not every idea deserved airtime. From Robo-Stooges to Disco Bears, these flops vanished for a reason. Forgotten by fans, ignored by history. Which one do you vaguely remember? Drop your favorite Hanna-Barbera oddity in the comments and hit subscribe for more retro deep dives.